Hello and welcome to Check One Two, recorded here at the world famous podcast studio Glasgow. Our next guest is Todd Whiteford, who is a dual testicular cancer survivor and the owner of a thriving coffee shop called the Good Coffee Cartel. Todd's story is nothing short of inspiring, from overcoming having testicular cancer twice to becoming a father through IVF. We hope you enjoy this conversation and Todd's story, and here we are, Todd Whiteford.
So they've obviously gone, you can get an edge by drinking too much caffeine. And so do that for every single thing. See this plant, if you found out that by eating a tiny bit of that plant gave you something, they wouldn't know, they wouldn't think, let's test that plant.
Yeah.
Or not even eating it, just see if you rub that plant for 15 seconds, it actually releases something into your thumb, and that gives you a wee edge. But they're never going to know, the testers are never going to think, but see, you rub that plant. So they're never going to it's like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. You're never going to be able to narrow in on the guy that rubbed that plant. Now he's the Olympic champion.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for coming.
Are we starting?
Podcast? Aye, that's us rolling, man. That's us rolling.
I'm going to look at all the cameras.
But thanks for coming on, mate. Just to kind of kick us off, do you mind kind of just going over your story just a little bit, and then we can just kind of just blather away, man?
Yeah. No worries. So I'm a double testicular cancer guy. So I've had it twice. Once in 2013, and then again in 2019. So 2013, kind of two very similar stories, but I was in a different place in my life for both of those. So 2013, really coming off the back of a great little season of singledom. Sort of London Olympics had just finished, we've been down to London, all this really just great, just no responsibilities, didn't have a particularly taxing job, was just kind of had a bit of money, had no responsibilities, living in a flat with two other people, and I was just life was dead easy and was in good shape, fit, going up and down the hills, that's kind of my thing, being outdoors. And found a lump, hummed and hawed over it for ages. I was like, I don't know, is this just me being silly, blah blah blah, classic late 20s West Coast male, just nah, come on, don't make a fuss about this, it's probably nothing. Went to get it checked out, and then pretty quickly they were ultrasound. Went for an ultrasound. They were okay, so this is what this is. You're looking at losing that testicle and surgery, chemo, all in a pretty quick space of time. The details are a bit blurry, but I'm pretty sure it was find out on the Monday, you're in surgery on the Thursday or something. And
see for you being so young, when you had that, you're young, you're single. During that kind of part of your story, how was that? Because when I had my cancer, I was, in a long-term relationship, kid, you know what I mean? So it was a very different time that you probably experienced in your second kind of round of that.
Yeah.
But what was that like, being young and single and finding out you're going to lose a testicle? That must have been quite strange.
I don't know, at the time I probably didn't. The only thing that really, it was a bit of advice that was given to me by the surgeon was we'll put a silicone, a fake boy in. And I was if you want. He was well, yeah, because if you're single, then you want to be in control of when you might want to tell people that that's happened to you, rather than be, in doing some single activities and then someone goes, oh, wait a minute, there's something missing down there kind of thing. You want to obviously have the opportunity to do it at your own pace, which I totally get. But yeah, I think it probably helped not having that many responsibilities and being that age of just being well, I feel pretty indestructible. So it's a bit of a wake-up call. You're not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't have, I didn't have a wife worrying about me. I had family worrying about me. But I didn't have particularly, the job I had at that time wasn't one that I was oh, it must be there, or the place will fall apart without me kind of thing. So I probably was I had the luxury of being a bit like, well, you know, I just deal with this myself, and then I'll just crack on.
It's interesting as well, because it's like, I think having these types of conversations, I learn so much from everybody else's experience, and that's the kind of hope of the podcast, is that, you know, when guys who are at any stage of their testicular cancer journey are going to watch this and go, that's how I felt, or that's what. So for me, like, I've spoke about this kind of openly as well, that I didn't opt for the prosthetic, and my wife was there when I kind of made that decision as well, and it was like, I wasn't that bothered because I didn't have that tie of, well, you know, it's like, I thought, like, she's got me. Like, so, like, she's stuck with me.
You're locked down.
She, like, I always say to her, like, you know, I'm hers until I die or she finds something better. And so I thought, I don't need to get the prosthetic. So it's interesting hearing, like, that advice from, like, your surgeon, because I can't remember really, because it's so long ago, but I don't think he kind of really overly spoke on that as such. I think it was just a case of, you can if you want to type thing.
He maybe could detect that I was just such a little Casanova that I was going to want that, which is not the case at all. It wasn't like it was. There wasn't lots of action happening. You know, it was just a moderate amount of action. But I don't know. Maybe your wife should have been consulted on it. Maybe the surgeon should have said, "Look, do you like balls? Because if you do, we'll put one in.
We'll put one in.
Be any different."
Yeah, it could have been a very different outcome. You know, because I think she would have opted for 3.
Yeah. One with a little remote control in it, just to sort of like
it lights up.
Yeah, well, it vibrates.
Vibrates, exactly. Yeah.
Listen, this could be a new business for us. Prosthetic balls with functionality that's controlled by the partner.
Let's just keep this between you and I and the listeners.
Yeah,
nobody will know.
Right. So trademark, it's stamped as a trademark now officially.
That's it. You heard it here first.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Right.
So you've went through that. How's your first round of treatment? Was that something that met your expectations? Was it, or did you have any expectations going into it? I think that's the kind of the question I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, I think what my expectations were when they said chemo, I was like, right, that's going to be like losing all my hair and, you know, like kind of withering away, getting really pale. That's the kind of what I've seen in media of what chemo is like. But yeah, like Jeff White, who's the consultant oncologist who kind of managed me through the thing, he's kind of like, well, there's loads of different, because you know, like, you don't know any, especially at that age, you don't know anything about cancer until it comes up and kicks you right in the nuts, and then you're like, oh right, okay, so now I need to find out some stuff. So he was like, this is the sort of chemo you can get. It's this carboplatin intravenous, 1 dose, and then that'll be you. So yeah, I guess my expectations were probably on the drastic side. Yeah. And I was fortunate that it didn't feel all that drastic. And like when I sat and had chemo, the people next to me in the chair were like, I felt a wee bit like a fraud, because I walked in there with like, you know, like just normal, my outdoor clothes on, kind of like chatting away to all the folk. Oh, how you doing? Pretty good. Yeah. And without being, maybe not super sensitive, but probably a bit of a defense mechanism. I think if you sat me down in front of a therapist, they'd be able to unpick all the little stupid things that I did in my 20s. They were like, yeah, you did that because you were a scared little boy, and your defense mechanism is to pretend that you're not a scared little boy and be friendly to everyone and be like overconfident, or just feel overly comfortable in the situation that you're obviously not comfortable in.
Which isn't a bad thing though either. You know, it's not a bad thing.
Maybe not, but I think maybe looking back on it now with a more mature head, I might think that the people next to me might be like, who's this pretender?
Yeah.
You know, they I think the guy I spoke to was on like round 9 or something, like 3 rounds of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, all right, mate, what are you in for? Like, is this not, you know, that is kind of, that bravado maybe probably helped me, but might not have helped the people around me so much. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
No, not at all. But so did you get? So was it kind of more outpatient chemo that you got for your first round? Then so it was like, or did you have to stay in hospital, or was it?
No.
So you're
in and out.
Yeah. So, and
what were you a couple of rounds?
Yeah, I was 2 rounds, and I was inpatient. So my chemo was BEP, so it had platinum in it.
Right.
So it was. So I had
the
to,
expensive stuff that.
Yeah, aye. And that's the stuff that kind of wipes out your immune system as well. So yeah, that was the 2 rounds, and it was 3 courses over the kind of 2 rounds. So I was in. Say I went in a Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was hooked up to the IV overnight. So yeah. So
yours spread then.
That had the potential. So when I got my CT scan done, Jeff came and said to me, said, listen, the new protocol is for guys in kind of your stage, the type of cancer that you've got is, because mine was embryotic, so it was growing within my testicle, not on top of it.
Right.
So it was just basically like, it's now moving down to 1 blast of chemo, but we're not quite there yet. And he said there is maybe some cancer cells looking like they're like at the lymph nodes in your groin, in your kind of abdomen. So let's just do the 2, essentially. I think if I was 6 months later, I just would have been 1 round.
Yeah.
So I was kind of lucky and unlucky. I kind of like to think that I'm glad I got the 2 because it really wiped out those cancer cells anyway, So yeah, it was, so the inpatient was kind of very different in terms of kind of that. I used to have to kind of pee all the time. So you'd have to, but they test it. So they'd have the cardboard bottles. And me being me, I was trying to kind of have fun all the way through it. So I used to draw stuff on the bottles for the nurses. So like one would look like a golf club or a snake and they always knew when I was feeling particularly rubbish because I didn't draw anything.
Right.
So
it was like a big swear word across.
Yeah, just so
drink meat.
Drink I wish I had known that at the time. I would have put that on. But so that was the kind of the difference in that. So you've had that kind of round at outpatient chemo then. How do you feel going through that? Did you have any major side effects of kind of that type of chemo?
No, it was the first week was like they just said, I can't remember, what they like, just kind of keep yourself to yourself. Like that's when you're really susceptible to picking up, like a cold then feels like 100 times worse than a cold. So I just like my wee pals from school, so Gary and Nelson, they're like, I've known them my entire life pretty much. So they were quite good at looking after me. Like Nelson picked me up from the hospital, brought me to McDonald's, and then they came around. I'm pretty sure Nelson lent me his console or something. Anyway, there was lots of video games, lots of FIFA. And then the second week, can't really remember. 3rd week was when I felt like shit. Was when like I was off food, couldn't really sleep that well. And if you know one thing about me, Paul, I'm really good at eating and I'm really good at sleeping. So it's bad if you can't do those 2 things. And even now, there's still things that I can't eat because of the, like the, whatever it is, the neural pathway that I associate one sort of food with just feeling like shit from chemo. So yeah, fondant icing.
Really fondant icing? Right, okay.
So that was kind of, the 3rd week was the one that I just felt, a bit kind of grotty.
Aye. And fondant icing, what a shame as well. Mine was...
I prefer buttercream.
Buttercream anyway. Mine was Ritz crackers. Because that was all that I could eat during it.
Yeah.
And the smell of lavender. Because whenever I went home, my wife had we just got thankfully, like at that time, I just got a new bed, a new mattress and everything. And then, she'd have it all nice and have this beautiful, lavender candle. And I love the smell of lavender as well. Yeah. And then I remember not long after treatment I'd finished, and what's that? And I was like, oh, I could just feel the retch and stuff. I was like, I actually can't handle it. Yeah.
Oh, that's gutting.
Yeah. So it's funny that you had the same type of reaction, because you speak to some people and it's like, No, I'm still all the same. But yeah, I had very much that wee neural pathway just went, nope,
Yeah.
you don't like this anymore.
I suppose it all depends on what your metabolism is and your genetic makeup, right? Because some people react really well to drugs, some people don't react well to drugs. Any kind of drugs. So I think maybe I'm one that's like a wee bit sensitive to all kinds of drugs.
I'm definitely that, because like see, even like see when you come to like the cartel and come to your coffee shop, and it's a full on espresso, like I can feel myself like kind of rattling if I have one too many. I've got that definite like not intolerance, I don't think that's the right word, but it's like my like caffeine sensitivity. That's the word. Like, and because I love caffeine, I love coffee, so but especially coming to your gaff, I'm like, yep, this is definitely full of caffeine.
That's one where if you know you're coming, you like get yourself a nice little to-do list, little chores, and then you bang that one down and then just start going through the chores. Right, pick up this. Okay, phone that guy. Yep, reply to that message. Yep, do.
I'll have to come. I'll have to start just coming before I go to work, and when we go into the office, Richie will look around and it'll be this pristine, clean office.
Yeah, just a little Tasmanian devil, but the clean version, not wrecking the place.
So, just to kind of move backwards a bit, you've went through that first. How long was it from kind of getting it all clear as such from your first diagnosis to then going into your second?
Like pretty much straight away.
Right.
So like more or less, it was like I was on a 5-year thing. So once every 3 months for 2 years, once every 6 months for 2 years, and then a year between. And yeah, literally last one, Jeff was like, right, that's you off the books. Cheers. And then 6 months later, I emailed him and I was like, can I come up to clinic? Because I think I've found something. And he was like, yeah, no worries. So I was pretty, they were back to back. Yeah, so that's a bit annoying.
Back to back, ball to ball.
Ball to ball.
Ball to ball.
Yeah, ball to ball.
That must have been like heartbreaking though. Like, when you got that diagnosis, were you still single at that point, or had you met your now wife?
I was locked down.
Right, loved up.
Yeah, loved up. Yeah, right. Properly loved up. Yeah, so it was a like completely different situation. You know, you're gone from a boy, you know, to a man. Yeah, so like really secure in the relationship. Obviously thinking about like future plans. All this kind of thing. So yeah, that was a little bit more multi-faceted, with obviously thinking, oh, okay, now there's somebody else who like will be really worried about me, so better like be a bit more sensitive to that, and that has to be managed. And then obviously when you're thinking about the future, it's like, if you want kids, got to have nuts to have kids. Actually, it turns out you don't. So yeah, that was a bit more tricky to manage, and obviously the second one, you're like, oh come on, like no, I don't have any balls. Great. So yeah, that's a lot harder to kind of mentally file away. Again, if you brought a therapist in, you'd be like, look at all this overcompensation this guy's doing. But yeah, so went up to Jeff. Jeff sent me down for an ultrasound that day, pretty much. And he was like, come back. What did he say? I think he phoned me on Monday and he was like, you need to come into clinic on this Friday. And I walked in and he just looked at me and he was like, do my best Jeff impression. He was like, we've got a problem.
That's a pretty good Jeff impression.
I was like, okay. So he sat me down, and then, yeah, I think I probably was in shock. I was just a bit like, okay, cool. Right, Jeff, right, yeah. But then you're immediately on the rails of like, so that was a Friday. Friday you're getting the diagnosis. Monday you're in surgery. Then another round of chemo. So
was the chemo the same as you got previously? Was it the exact same type?
Carbo, yeah,
right.
Delicious carbo.
Aye.
Yeah, so that was really, really quick turnaround. And I don't know, because it was a new primary. So it was actually nothing to do with the first one was stage 1 seminoma. The second one was stage 1 seminoma.
Oh, so it wasn't anything to do.
No.
You just were
Just
unlucky enough to get a brand new cancer.
primary.
Wow.
And it's some mad like low percentage of doubles.
I think is it not? I mean, even to get it as a kind of a double is 2%. I think of all the cases can be. So that's pretty low. But then to have your situation, that's a lottery kind of odds, is it not?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, so one that then jumps to the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just special, I guess.
You're definitely special, mate. You're definitely special.
So surgery, and I probably was a little bit darker about it. The surgeon was like, "Do you want a prosthetic?" I was like, "Don't bother, don't bother, just do it." Yeah, so that was the thing about that was like the very one of the first things, because I'd been through it before. I was like, probably not going to die, but not going to have any nuts. So I think if you asked Jeff, he'd be like, it was literally the first thing out of his mouth. It was like, will I still be able to have sex? And he was like, yes. You know nothing about the human body. It's like, you don't need those to have sex. So that was quite good. And then he just kind of talked me through it. And I don't know whether I'm just maybe I'm the kind of person that is really susceptible to instruction. So when, if someone's shocked and then you just say, okay, but here's what you need to do. This. And I just go, yes, boss, yes, boss, yes, boss. And crack on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I probably do need a lot of therapy. So that all happened then back for chemo. Luckily, the first time I had it, in between surgery and chemo, they got me to go down and reserve some of my boys. So did a little, what's the best way to put it without putting too fine a point on it? Saved some sperm in a freezer for future me to enjoy.
Not with a coffee, but like to use.
Oh yeah, no, just like
not like it's like an Empire biscuit. So, and again at that point, I was like, well, yeah, like kids maybe, but kind of need to find the right partner for kids and all that stuff. And then fast forward to 2019, was like, I want to have kids with that woman. So yeah, luckily we were able to make use of that, because the second time was so quick between diagnosis and surgery that there was no time. Oh wow!
There wasn't even time to have a wank.
Wow! So, I can't believe they did that to you. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, I think that they knew, they were like, you've got reserves in the freezer. We don't need to waste any more time. I don't know whether because there's not so much data around like a second primary diagnosis that they're maybe like, well, any time wasted is time we don't really want to waste because we don't know. So I just get it off. Yeah. So
did you go to, was it Queen Margaret or something to do your sample, or did you just do it in?
I just did it in the bathroom. No, it was the Nuffield opposite Gartnavel.
Right.
It kind of sits in like Annie's Land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got sent to the Queen Margaret, and it was the weirdest experience.
Yeah, it's very strange.
I think as well, like, so imagine like this is the room where you've got your TV on the wall, you've got the box of pornos that looks like a painter's radio.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I didn't touch it. I brought my own.
Yeah. I was like, I'm just going to hammer down and whatever comes.
Just think of the best thing.
But the weird thing for me was, though, I was right next to the staff room. So while having to give a sample, I was listening to the nurses talk about their annual leave.
Oh, really? Not thinking about like, the nurse is saying, I wish I was in there with that guy.
So then when I come out with my cup, and as I'm coming out with my cup, one of the nurses comes out and goes, "You getting on okay?" And you're like, you're a little bit sweaty, you're a little bit kind of embarrassed. Yeah. And then somebody's asking you getting on okay, and you've got a handful of sperm.
You're like, you tell me. Huh?
It's like, well, I nearly filled the cup.
Yeah, I need another cup. Yeah, it is. I mean, the whole process is very odd.
Yeah.
Like, there's loads of odd bits about it. Even, like, that's definitely the first time that, like, my first diagnosis was the first time that I'd ever, like, shown a doctor my cock and balls.
Yeah, yeah.
And knowing what to do with them, maybe like, because they don't spell it out for you and say, right, so I'm going to close the curtain, then you just take off everything, and then what side is it that you want examined? And so if it's the left side, I want you to move everything else to the right and just hold it with your hands.
Yeah.
Which
I like
is,
how you use two hands there, mate.
just hold it with your hands. So just hold it with your hands. Yeah, so that would be great instruction to have. Because if you leave it up to me, I will do the stupidest way. Like, if you ask my wife about how I go through tasks, she'd be like, that's not the most efficient way to do that. And it would be the same with this. So, like, I went in, she said, all right, just like get your trousers down and let's have a look. So, shoes off, socks off, trousers off, boxers off. On the bed, and I was like, well, again, overthinking, I was like, I don't want to, like, hold it, because does that look like sort of like George Michael on the cover of whatever that album is, you know, where he's sort of like,
oh yes,
perched.
yeah.
I was like, that looks a bit like, not a come on, but it maybe looks a bit odd. So maybe I'll just not touch anything. But then, if something's in the way, then what I'm saying is, you're going to move that for me. That's also not great. So I think in the end, I just kind of like, I can't remember what I did. Anyway, it was just very, very odd.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the same with going up to give the deposit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just a very kind of, I think I made odd outfit choices that day as well. So, like, a lot of clothes had to come off. And then, yeah, kind of like coming out of the room, like, I think my buttons were like slightly not in the right.
Oh, really?
You know, where you're just a bit like frantic, like, I don't want them to think I'm really enjoying this, you know, like taking 45 minutes, and like, I was like, just get out quickly. And then I think my buttons were like slightly misaligned. It was all over the place. It's like sweating.
You don't want them to think like, this guy's brought in candles, he's brought in he's brought in lotion. Like, he's really going to be in there a while.
Barry White.
Barry White playing in the background.
So yeah, very, very odd. Just generally, it's odd when it's to do with your cock and balls. It's just odd.
Yeah, and again, I think that's like the hope for these conversations is, you know, it's not just guys going through it, but guys in general. Like, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier on when you were saying about, you know, typical West of Scotland male, you know, not really kind of wanting to think about it or act on it. And it's these conversations that we have to have, because there is absurdity within these things. It's like when I went to get my scan, my very first scan, I walked up, and by this point I had 3 people touch my genitals that wasn't my wife. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, okay,
just on the bus.
Just on the bus. I was like, okay, like this is easy. Nobody's bothered. I'm just going to go in. So I walked through to the ultrasound room, walked in, pulled my jeans down as I thought I should, and the wee wife turns round and is aghast that I'm standing there flapping in the wind, and she's like, oh son, I need a chaperone. And I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. But just as I go to pull up my trousers, I'm bent over, down at my ankles, this wee nursing assistant walks in at the back of me and goes, oh, it's a full moon. And I'm like, just caught in this absurd situation where I'm like, well, the chaperone's here. And then the wee wife just looked at me and get up in the bed. Yeah. So I just kind of waddled.
There's nothing else left to see.
No, it's like, well, the worst's happened.
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
I think it's like, and I say that when I go out and do talks. The doctors and nurses I've seen more cocks and balls than they care to even admit. Yeah. You know, they don't care about yours.
Yeah, that's probably the hard thing for me to take with my ego, is that someone would not care about seeing my penis. Like, what? You don't care? Oh, come on. You care a wee bit. No, they don't care. They don't care.
I'm not much an exhibitionist. Like, I'm always like aghast that nobody's like, puts it away. It's like, no, come here. Like, oh.
Come here.
Yeah. Here's Paul, cock out again, you know?
Yeah. But I suppose, I sometimes worry, see when I talk about this stuff, I sometimes worry that I'm like too glib and find it too funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, obviously don't find it funny because it was serious. It is serious that people are going through it now. But I think as a coping mechanism, objectively, see if you kind of take a step back, loads of this stuff is really humorous. Even getting the ultrasound is they put the gel on, they whack the gel on, and then they kind of, I feel so nice. I mean, it is nice. But objectively, it feels nice. In the moment, it's not nice because you think, well, maybe I'm dying of cancer. But yeah, so I suppose it's important to realise that glibness about it only goes so far. But it is also a coping mechanism for the bleak oblivion of darkness that is having cancer.
But it works as well. I think that's something you and I have had a very similar outlook on how we were dealing with it. Like that, my whole kind of cancer journey was based around it just being glib with it and being funny with it, and probably the exact same as you. I'm just this wee guy from Falkirk who was walking in and going, "Hello, how you doing?" Drawing shit on urine bottles and things like that to make myself laugh more than anything. I think that was always the thing. Objectively, you could look at it and go, "Oh, look, who's this guy?" Always cracking jokes and trying to make folk laugh. But actually, I was more doing it for myself more than anything. I think that's where that kind of almost whimsical humour about my genitals kind of really helped. Well, I've got to make the jokes, otherwise I'd be sitting crying about it.
Laugh or you're crying.
Yeah. So the interesting thing for me is that you didn't have that downtime off recovery. So you were you've not got cancer, then you've got cancer. Because for me, the way that I kind of, it's almost like the laughter stopped for me at one point. And that was probably weirdly about 6 months after it. I've talked about this before, where I was sitting in the bath on my son's 5th birthday. The family are all coming round, and I couldn't move out of the bath. I was just no emotion at all, just none, sheer lack of emotion, just looking at a dripping tap. The water stone cold by the time, I eventually got out and knew there was something wrong. And it was definitely that kind of, certainly that depressive mood, and had to kind of find how to kind of resolve that. And that happened well after it. People think you're going through cancer, that you're going to feel that during it. But I didn't. I don't know, were you the same? Did you feel a kind of sense of sadness and overwhelmness that first time round, or?
Probably not. Mm-hmm. I think I just went into siege mentality, or Sir Alex Ferguson, siege mentality, or back against the wall. So it's kind of you're adrenalized. You're just a little bit all this is new. So it's I suppose fueled by nervous energy, disguised as being comfortable and fine with it. But probably after it, probably once the stormy seas had died down, and you're sort of picking through the wreckage, and then you're like, oh, that bit in my brain is a bit fucked. But I think I don't think I got depressed about it, but I probably did and probably do carry a little bit of anxiety somewhere about health.
And is that probably that little bit kind of PTSD style thing that goes on in your head? So carrying that into your second diagnosis, how were you just as you were in the first one? Obviously, you'd had a period of maturity and age at time had went by as well, and then you're obviously, you're loved up and you're in a kind of strong relationship. was there any conversations that I've spoke to somebody before? Was there any conversations between yourself and your now wife? Was there any? How is this relationship going to function after it? The example that I'm talking about is that they actually had a conversation. Well, I don't want to be a widow. I don't want to get married or be a widow as such,
Right,
with your health. Was that something? Like, was that even not maybe that extreme, but was that type of conversation something you guys had, or was it just you're in with the trenches, kid?
Yeah, not at all. Like, I think it was one of the things that like not catalyzed. Come on, brain. Like, it sort of crystallized in my head that this is the person who I'll be with forever. Because, like, when it happened, it was just like, she's just ride or die. Just like, okay, so what we're doing now about this? There was never any kind of, like, I suppose, doubt, or, you know, she would sort of take me as I am no matter what. So, like, I think all that crystallized in my head that, like, she'll be standing there regardless of the outcome.
No matter what, yeah.
And I guess regardless of the outcome of any other health issues that should crop up down the line.
Yeah.
And that'd be the same for her. So I guess it's that. But you probably don't ever get to realise that until something really shit happens, and then you're like, oh, they're like that. They're like that at their core, so that's a good thing. So I'll just hang around with that person, which is quite, again, like, to look for the positives in all these situations. Like, you might never find that out about a person, but it's nice when you do.
Oh, it definitely is. I think both my wife and I had that same realisation. I mean, we'd been together for a while, but it was that, oh, you're my ride or die. This is us. Like, we're in the thick of this, of everything together.
Yeah.
And it's quite it's almost like that kind of come to Jesus moment. You go, this is excellent. You know, somebody's picked me, oddly enough, to be that, but I've also found the person that, you are exactly who I need to be that. And I always say that, like, my wife was my absolute rock through it all, you know what I mean? Like, and I had some crappy moments during my thing. I had sepsis at one point. My wound dehisced. So it's like, so basically, the wound was closing. I don't know how they have the stitches, internal stitches.
Yeah.
So I'm probably butchering this. So any medical person who ever watches this, like, you're telling this wrong, Paul. But it just basically started to pop. So the stitches in the inside started to kind of not go. So I had this huge, massive welt. I was in the hospital with that, and then ended up with bird flu at one point as well during my treatment. And I remember Jeff, like, when I went for my last round of chemo, was like, "You've been through the middle of it." I'm like, yep, definitely. But let's get this done.
As if you didn't have enough to deal with. And then, so what happened when it dehisced? What's in that? Do they burst that and it comes out, or?
Well, luckily there was like a small type kind of hole that the surgical wound had already left. So, like, all that infection, you know, came out through that. But they might have had to have opened up and cleaned it, essentially. But thankfully I never needed that. So, but guys, don't worry, you're not going to have to go through this, hopefully. It's just an odd Paul McCaffrey thing.
You've taken all the bird flu, the dehisced, the sepsis. That's for everybody.
I actually, at one point as well, thought they'd put a prosthetic in, because I remember, like, going, there's something not right down there. And I was like, and it was at the point where I could touch, like, and it not be sore. And I'm going, there's this massive thing. I was like, they've put a prosthetic in there. And I was feeling it, and it felt like a testicle. So much to the point when I went up to, and it was causing me pain. And so much to the point when I went up to the A&E, the doctor at A&E was like, "Are you sure you didn't get a prosthetic put in?" And I'm like, "I promise you." Like, and I was raging. I was like, "See if they've put one in," and I didn't ask for it. And it turned out it was just what do you call it? It's terrible. Hematoma. So where one of the veins had it just basically swollen up like a balloon. So it was just a blood sac inside my scrotum that made it look like I had two balls. And for a second I was like, "Oh, I've got two balls again."
Or even worse, if they'd done the surgery but just forgotten to take your cancerous testicle out.
I would take it away.
We just got distracted. We were chatting about something and we just sewed you up, and then
we're just laughing at the size of your penis ball.
Yeah. It looks like a penis. It's smaller.
It's smaller.
I was going to ask you how you then dug yourself out, or did you get help to dig yourself out of the depressive phase? Because it's quite interesting, like whether you can get it internally, can you just motivate yourself to get out of it, or whether it was from external things, your son, your wife.
Yeah, I think with mine, especially like there was a lot of kind of play. I think, you know, you would have had that. I mean, you probably had that more than anybody, you know, that testosterone drop, you know, but I think that really that testosterone drop, and it maybe slightly affected my mood at that point anyway. But then that sudden realization of like, oh, I've had cancer. Like it was quite burdensome at that point, and it really weighed on me. Because of my time working within mental health, and my wife being a mental health nurse, I opted to kind of go down the pharmaceutical route to kind of just pull that up, and that worked for a period of time, you know. And what helped come off the tablets that time was my wife, my son, you know, trying. When we went to kind of try for a baby, and you had those fertility issues, even, you know, a year or so after having that's kind of really what helped me just kind of overcome that a little bit. And obviously, you know, for me, there'd become a bit of a weakness there, and I have good days and bad days. I'm not always I'm not the same person as I was before my cancer diagnosis. I like to think, I genuinely like to think I'm a better person since it. I'm not quite as, you know, fraught as I kind of once was. I was always quite, you know, if I was outgoing, I always felt like an introverted extrovert. Yeah. So yeah. I would, you know, you've seen me so many times now. I'm gregarious, I can chat, I can do this, but there's times where I'm so balled up with like, oh, am I doing the right thing or saying the right thing? Yeah, you know, I get really nervous, but I never show that as such. But that worsened that almost imposter syndrome thing. And then I was having a shitty time at work, all that type of thing. So moving careers, you know, Pamela and I ended up having a second child and all that type of thing. So that helped, that coming out of the doldrums of depression, as it were, you know. But I think it's like, when you look at that fertility thing, you more than most are going to understand that that's what a burden that must have been for you guys. When you had that second diagnosis, you know that you're getting it removed, you know that you're having to go through chemo anyway. How long, like, this might be kind of too personal question, you might not know the timeline, but how long was it where you had that thought of, you know, are we going to want to have kids? Was there any conversation around that when you got your second diagnosis?
Yeah, because we were kind of, oh no, am I going to get my timelines blurry a wee bit? Because we were we trying for kids? Or were we were, the two things happened pretty close together. I can't remember which was first. Was that we were like, let's have some babies, and then diagnosis. But I can't remember. We were sort of just very slowly thinking about IVF as a route. So it must have been, we must have been thinking just before the diagnosis. Maybe we were like, maybe it's not quite going to plan. I need to ask my wife about the timeline. It must have been that though, because it must have been, maybe we've been trying for, the thing is, it could have been like a couple of months. Maybe we were like trying for kids and nothing was really happening. Maybe it might have been 3 months. I don't know. You need to ask my manager.
Listen, as men, we don't know. I remember my cousin telling me, like, they were trying. He's like, I've been trying for a few months, and his wife went, we've been trying for a year. He's like, oh, okay.
Been trying for a few days. No, we must have been trying in a sort of casual way.
Yeah.
And then either just beginning to be like, if we want to do this, if we actually do want to do this, I think we need help. And then I think it must have been the second diagnosis, and then like, all right, well, it's kind of, it leaves a lot of unknowns off the table because now we know this is the way forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, the thing with that's probably the most frustrating bit of the journey is then going down the IVF path is worse for Shan than it is for me, especially during COVID. Like, see, during COVID, I didn't even go in the hospital. So for the appointments, I was just in the car. So she would go in, then get, like pumped for the drugs, then, the process. And I would just be like, all right, I'll just drop you off. I'll just wait outside. See you in 20 minutes kind of thing. And so the impact is, it's almost like it was my fault. Oh God. It was my fault, but then she's kind of having to pay the physical price for that.
Yeah.
And then all the way up until, thankfully, here's the good news. Then she got pregnant and now we got a baby. But yeah, like that's all her. I mean, yeah, pregnancy, like there's no two ways about that. It's always the woman that has to bear the child. But yeah, the process to lead up to that was all, again, it's her making physical sacrifices and me just being like, see you in 20 minutes, I'm just going to do Instagram for a bit. Like, so again, you just feel a bit like, sort of powerless and yeah, and also a little bit uninvolved because of COVID. Like, they were like, oh yeah, you can't come in. Like, all right, I might as well not be here.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm not, I'm not also not going there to like give the sample on the day that the egg is going to be fertilized because I did it 6 years ago, so they're just unfreezing it. So all that stuff is like, I just go on holiday for 2 weeks and then let me know when you're pregnant kind of thing. Oh dear, yeah. So,
but again, that must have that like, and I don't mean ego as in like that kind of the me ego, but the ego of self going, I'm not involved in any of this. It's like, and for you especially, having gone through 2 testicular cancers and then not being involved, how did you reconcile that then? Is it something that you have reconciled even, even though you've got your beautiful wee baby in front of you, have you reconciled that thought and drain on you mentally from not being able to be involved in all that, especially because of COVID?
Try not to think about it. No, I don't know. Like, I suppose that doesn't matter now. Like, it's not really. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just. Do you know that way? I was like, Paul, you're getting too deep.
No,
it's a question that came to mind.
But it's interesting because, it's if you want to find the deep things, you got to ask the deep questions. Yeah, but I don't know whether, like, is there a reconciliation? Like, the way I feel is that Shan is owed a debt by me, by the NHS, no, by me, for that kind of like that, definitely that process, and we had ups and downs with that process, which was really, really like. Actually, there's parts of that process that they're probably the bleakest times compared to going through cancer,
right?
In terms of like the way where you place your hopes and then your hopes are dashed and then, that kind of thing. So it's really, really difficult. So like, oh God, we're going to go off on a tangent, right? So like the other thing that sometimes I worry is that I see when people tell me that they have a problem with like some sort of problem, like you have to have like quite a high level problem for me to be sympathetic.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, that's probably a bad thing about me. Yeah, like I feel like if someone says, I can't think of an example, but the concept is, having been through cancer twice, I'm like, see to get a reaction out of me, you have to have a pretty high level, especially if it's a health thing, has to be pretty high level. Otherwise, I'm just like, well, it's not 2 cancers, so can't be that bad. But to come back around, yeah, the IVF thing is a lot more, or in my experience of it, a lot more painful, a lot more difficult to manage mentally for both of you and also for the relationship as well. So that's where I do have a tremendous amount of empathy for people who are going through that as well. It's like just very, very difficult. And
just through my own experiences, we were very lucky in the sense that we were at the point of almost having to do IVF. It was about 2 years of trying with nothing, and then we got to the point of, right, we're going to go away we went a weekend away at Poland. We thought, right, we're going to go away and we're going to just relax and try and just enjoy this time, and then, you know, go down the IVF route, which was, for me as well, like, I think, you know, again, I always say that my ego isn't tied to, my masculinity isn't tied to my testicles, right? But there was an element of my masculinity tied to having creating a life with my wife, you know what I mean? That was always the kind of big thing. So you can see how hard it was on her when we weren't conceiving, you know, because I mean, it's that ups and downs anyway, when you're trying naturally, you know, and then to go from not having that ability to, we went away to Poland and came home, you know, and then I think it was only a matter of weeks, you know, and Pamela was like, kind of something going on, and it turned out she was pregnant, you know. So we were very lucky that we didn't have to take that final step, but the whole lead up to that, the preamble and going to all the appointments and all that was something that was quite eye-opening in terms of, so I'm kind of like you, I have a lot of empathy and compassion for, you know, people who are going through it. I've had family members and friends who have had to go down that route, and it seems such a difficult thing, you know, especially with some of the, you know, the losses that people will feel, you know, you know, having times where, you know, the eggs just don't want to attach, and you know, that must be horrible to go through. Not just as, you know, the woman who's going through it, but to sit there as a partner and go, I've no control here, you know, and like you say, you know, your wife, she obviously sacrificed a lot physically to then be in a position to go do IVF. So it's something that, again, we need to talk about more, and it just gives people an understanding out with, and I think that's why having these conversations is I think, one, it's amazing for me because I get to learn so much more about the other side of like a testicular cancer that I never experienced, but to be able to talk about this and have people hopefully tune in and listen and feel that lived experience and know that there is always hope. I think that's the kind of main thing. Like I try to kind of get that across in my talks. Having cancer it sucks. It's horrible. And like you say, I laughed and I was glib through it all. And it's not funny to some people, and some people won't laugh at their cancer. I did. And that's okay. But at the end of the day, you've always got to have that hope. And then you have these stories like yourself. And actually, when I'm out my talks, I use your video. You know, it's like, and this is the poster boy for Cahonas. This is Todd. But your story is so heartwarming, and especially at the point, you know, where you know, you're able to tell people that, hey, you've got in the video, obviously, you know, your wife's pregnant, you know, but now you have a physical human in front of you.
I suppose then when you look at, for me anyway, like the outcome, like if someone said that, oh, you can have both your nuts back, but your life, you know, like the butterfly effect, your life will be slightly different. I wouldn't take my nuts back. I've lost way more valuable things than my own nuts. That doesn't really bother me. But yeah, like the story has a happy outcome so far. But yeah, what I do wonder what it would be like if it didn't have a happy outcome, and how hard that would be. So yeah, I guess it's hard because you, like, it's easy for me to tell this story because I know where it goes and I know it like it ends good, but yeah, some stories don't.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're kind of undoing your point, but like what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, I try and be. I have to learn to try and be a bit conscious about sharing that, because maybe some people don't want to hear, like, I don't want to hear your flipping story about your little cancer journey and then now you've got a kid and good for you. Like people are going through way tougher situations, but yeah, at the same time, if one, like if I had listened to my story when I was younger, before my first diagnosis, I wouldn't have hesitated to go to the doctor. I probably would have been a lot more conscious about doing self-checks, a lot more conscious about what to look for, and yeah, would have felt maybe that there's other people going through the same thing.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think that, and again, I've spoke about this before, where if me and my wife had seen our story and all the things that the unanswered questions, because until I met you, I hadn't met anybody else with testicular cancer. So even when I went through treatment, there was nobody in the ward I was in. There was obviously other cancer patients, but it was bone cancer, lung cancer, and stomach cancer was all and it was all older guys. Yeah. So I didn't meet anybody else. So and oddly, I felt that statistic of it being low cases in Scotland as such comparatively.
Yeah.
The odd thing is though, since coming out of that and coming out of the NHS and coming into my role with Cahonas, is that I think those stats are wild, because every time I go somewhere now, if I go and do a talk or a presentation or even just like a kind of a stall somewhere, somebody always says, "Oh, my uncle had it," or "My son had it," or "I've went through it," and you're going, "Wait a minute, I'm only in Glasgow and I've met 50 people."
Yeah, that's not 2%.
It doesn't. Like it doesn't make any sense, and I think that's the aim, is to have this as a resource for guys who, again, they don't have to have testicular cancer to listen to this, but to know.
But it helps.
But it definitely helps. It definitely helps, especially when, like, again, you're hearing stories, and there is going to be stories of, that are a little bit darker in terms of it. We were just lucky in terms of the way we were caught, the way we were looked after. I think. I think that's the kind of the big takeaway from me, was that I was so lucky in terms of kind of the events that led to me finding my lump and using Cahonas' self-check guide. If I hadn't have thought there was something, if I hadn't been doing a charity run, I maybe wouldn't have thought there was a problem. Yeah. If I didn't think there was a problem, I wouldn't have found Cahonas. Do you know what I mean? It's all these things, and then you got looked after by the same team that I did, and by God, they were amazing. I couldn't thank Jeff and the team more than the time that I had, went through my treatment. It's amazing when you meet those types of people, and now getting to meet guys like you, and we've met other testicular cancer survivors, and it just seems to be this wee community, that's kind of forging out of it. Are you sick of telling your story, or do you because I know that I'm not necessarily.
Are you sick of hearing it?
No, I hear it every talk. So, because I thought that I would be, and there's times where I think, maybe people are sick of hearing my story, but actually, I don't think that there is a kind of a thing. I went through a period of, fuck, are going to be fed up me going, cancer, testicular cancer. But for the minute we've met, you've been very open and very kind of like, you've let us in, to your life about it as well.
I'm not sick of it. Like, for me, it's quite repetitive, right? Obviously, because I just go through it 20 times a day in my head. But I suppose what I think is that by sharing, you might you might just nudge one other person into action about their own health. And if that's the case, then that's good enough. So for every person who might be like, oh, here he fucking goes about his balls again. Like, okay, fine. But like, I have anecdotal, like there was a guy, I won't say what bank it is, but I went in to get my finances in order. Yeah. And I can't remember how we got onto the topic. I don't know whether Cahonas came up or something like that. And he was like, oh, I can't remember what it was. It was like something on, I can't remember. Anyway, I think I was wearing the wee badge.
Ah, okay.
Actually, and he was like, what's the badge? The infinity balls. Mm. And I was like, oh, it's Cahonas, blah, 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 blah. And then he basically described to me what was going on in his nut bag at that time. And I was like, I should probably go and get it checked, man, to be honest. Yeah. And then I went back like 2 weeks later and he was like, I did go and get it checked. It's nothing, but I'm really glad I went and got it checked. And I told him like a very potted history of like my story. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm not sick of telling it if I think it can help, you know, like past version of me.
Yeah.
Or like other people who were like that, where you like going through life at that age, no responsibilities, really physically able, and nothing on your radar to suggest that I'm ever going to die. Mm. and then to suddenly be like pushed into action and be like, yeah, you do have to look after that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's valuable. So that's a long way of saying no, I'm not sick of telling.
That's amazing though. But that's and I suppose that's a good thing, eh? It's like that we're able to kind of action something that we would have wanted. I think we've talked before where you didn't learn about this in school. Mm. I didn't learn about this in school. And I think that's, again, as Cahonas, we're trying to really push that education point. And exactly like you said, you know, if we can get one person to go, and then you've got that guy for the bank, I know when I do my talks, there's at least one person comes up to me and goes, oh, I've had this pain, or it's incredible. Like, it's almost 100% of the time. It's wild. And you give the same advice, you know, I'd just go and get that checked out, you know, please go to the doctors. And then you maybe get a message. You know, we've had some, you know, guys at football clubs, you know, DM us and be like, after your talk, I felt there was something, went to the doc, got it checked, but thankfully it's okay, but thanks for coming in. Yeah. That's what we're wanting, and we're trying to prove that as men, we don't talk about these things, but it doesn't mean we won't listen if we do. I think that's the big key, and being able to, you know, have voices like yours, you know, and the other guests that we're going to have on this podcast is really going to help kind of get that message out there. It's all right to talk about your balls, you know. You know, you don't have to be scared. They're there. They're out in the open for all to see. or is that just me?
Yeah, that's just you. That's just you. And
it's like, okay, that's that exhibitionist part of me again. But it is, you know, it's a hope, you know, that we can do that. And I think that's always been amazing. Like, you know, from that kind of first day meeting yourself and knowing that there's other guys out there that are willing to share their story. I think that's always the kind of big thing. And you're finding that more and more, you know, guys coming forward and saying, oh, I'll tell my story. You know, it's yeah, please do, you know. It's such a beautiful wee community, you know. And I think that's why we're going to kind of try and go into that peer support thing where if Cahonas, if we can do it, you know, just get guys that are going through it or want or having at any point of their journey and able to kind of, you know, just go out for a coffee, you know, come to the cartel and just sit, have a blather, not necessarily talk about the fact that you've got cancer, but just to have this beautiful kind of like community feel as such, which I think, you know, and this isn't me blowing smoke, but I think your coffee shop does that anyway. You know? It's such an amazing, like, it's such an amazing wee hub. Like, and I suppose this is me getting off track, but I just wanted to kind of know, see when you guys were putting the cartel together and you found your premises and all that, what is it that's made the shop feel the way it does? Because you walk in and you instantly feel like at home. You genuinely do. There's not a pretension to it, where there's some coffee shops you walk in and you can feel the the snobbery,
the chill in the air.
Yeah, there's something.
Good question. I think like one of the things I would say is like because we did the majority of the fit out ourselves. Definitely in the beginning when we were like, giving it a big push to get it off the ground. It was just me and my business partner there, so you're kind of setting the tone for the business and for what it can be to people. And initially, you're like, all right, well, cool. So there's no airs and graces because I know that if you push that bit of the wall, that bit's going to fall down. And I know that round the corner there, that's where we keep all the shit that we don't want people to see. So like, it doesn't have a kind of like stuffy feel. The space, like physically, it doesn't. Visually, it doesn't. And then, like I'm a friendly person. I'm a customer service guy, so that's like my big thing. Is just I just love giving people a good time. Like I just really like the simplicity of like that transaction. Someone comes in, they want a really good coffee and like that really nice donut. And they can give me a $5 and they can get that. And they're like, oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Come and do that again tomorrow. And it's just dead easy and it's social. So again, setting the tone. You're like, well, we're just a friendly kind of neighborhood coffee spot. And we just we roast our own coffee. So it's all, there's a thread of integrity going through the whole business because you know that when you come in, you can see the coffee's been roasted there. It's been packed there, they're brewing it there, and I'm walking out with it. And then you can buy your retail and stuff. And that's all. Now we have a team, but when you run the thread of integrity through, you can see that there's the common factor is the people that are involved. So it's not like some big conglomerates come in and be like, dump a load of money there, make a kind of cool coffee shop, and we'll just scrape off the profits. It doesn't have that feel because it's not that.
Yeah, it definitely
so
doesn't feel like that.
It just has an authenticity to it. And again, like the neighbourhood is very. Before we were there wasn't like anything similar to that kind of wanky coffee shop. Yeah, and we're just lucky that we've been adopted by the neighbourhood. We didn't think really what we wanted to do was roast coffee and wholesale it to other coffee shops, and our own coffee shop on that site was kind of not an afterthought, but it was definitely like a little bonus. We were like, oh, there's like loads of houses there and folk will come for coffee every day. So yeah, that's just kind of how that's come about. But in terms of community feel, like there's loads of other nice communities that want to use the space. So it is also the people that are in and around the building that create the community. It's not the building doesn't do anything.
It's because it's quite an eclectic mix of people as well. Like you find that like it's when you look at when you're coming in, it's all walks of life, all professions. It's I love coming in and sitting in and just like people watching as such. I suppose like just to kind of, this is me saying thank you for coming on and being part of the podcast and resharing your story. But I think I found out more today as well than maybe we have in conversations previously because we've talked about so much else. But to have that like sit down, so like I can't thank you enough, Todd.
Thanks for having me. I'm always happy to do stuff with Cahonas. I think Cahonas is the best.
Yeah, well, you're certainly our poster boy. We use you everywhere we go. And Jeff loves that we use you.
I should start charging you.
Should.
Actually,
likeness rights.
Yeah, actually, you could just get AI to replicate my likeness, and then you have to.
There we are. But now's your opportunity just to kind of plug the cartel yourself. Give us all your socials and things like that.
I'll just give you the Good Coffee Cartel. Glasgow's premier coffee business. We're just like friendly neighbourhood coffee shop. We roast our own coffee. We did a little custom job with Cahonas last year or this year. It was this year.
April, April, yeah.
So we do like really, really nice coffee. The social is at the Good Coffee Cartel. Yeah, that's it. At the Good Coffee. That's Instagram. What else can I plug? Just give people my bank account number,
home phone number.
Yeah. If they want to drop a little cheeky tenner in, I can't. That's it. That's just what I do.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Mate.
Oosh, 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 oosh.